Welcome to my channel, a list that brings your story about the love of a mafia boss. Now let's listen.
The fluorescent lights of Murphy's diner buzzed like dying insects above my head, casting everything in that sickly yellow glow that made even the healthiest person look half dead. I'd been on my feet for 11 hours straight, my lower back screaming with each step, my swollen breasts aching beneath the cheap polyester uniform that stretched too tight across my postpartum body. 6 weeks. That's how long it had been since I'd given birth to a daughter I couldn't keep, since I'd signed papers that made her someone else's miracle while my arms remained empty. The dinner rush had finally died down to a trickle of stragglers. Truckers nursing cold coffee, a couple of teenagers sharing a basket of fries. My reflection in the window showed a ghost of who I used to be, hollow-eyed, hair pulled back in a grease-stained ponytail, my name tag reading Maya, pinned crookedly over my heart. 23 years old and already invisible. Just another broke waitress in a forgettable uniform, in a forgettable diner on the outskirts of Chicago. I was wiping down the counter for the third time, my mechanical movements a kind of meditation, when the bell above the door chimed. The sound cut through the usual diner noise. The sizzle of the grill, the clatter of dishes, the low hum of the ancient radio playing classic rock, and something in the air shifted, changed. I looked up. 3 men entered first, and everything about them was wrong for Murphy's. Their suits cost more than I made in 6 months, black fabric that caught the light like oil slicks. They didn't walk. They prowled, their eyes scanning the room with the kind of awareness that made my survival instincts prickle. One took position by the door, another moved to the corner booth, his hand resting casually at his side in a way that suggested a weapon hidden beneath expensive tailoring. Then he walked in. Time didn't stop. Nothing so dramatic. But my breath caught somewhere between my lungs and my throat. He was tall, over 6 feet of controlled power wrapped in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that looked like it could cut glass, and eyes so dark they seemed to swallow light. But it wasn't his looks that made my hand still on the dish rag. It was the way everyone in the diner instinctively looked away. How conversation dropped to whispers, how even the cook's spatula seemed to scrape the grill more quietly. This was a man who owned every room he entered, and everyone knew it without being told. He carried something in his arms, and as he moved closer to the counter where I stood frozen, I saw it was a baby. A tiny thing bundled in what looked like a cashmere blanket, face red and scrunched, lips moving in that desperate way babies have when they're beyond hungry. Beyond crying, when they've exhausted themselves into a kind of trembling silence that's worse than screams. The man's eyes, black as a winter lake and just as cold, swept the diner before landing on me. I felt that gaze like a physical touch, assessing, measuring, seeing things I didn't want seen. His jaw was tight with something that might have been frustration or fear, though I couldn't imagine this man being afraid of anything. You. His voice was deep, accented, Eastern European, maybe Russian, and it wasn't a question. It was a command wrapped in a single syllable. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. "Sir?" He moved to the counter with a fluid grace that spoke of either dance training or violence, and I suspected the latter. Up close, I could smell him. Expensive cologne layered over something darker, like gunpowder and whiskey and winter nights. The baby in his arms whimpered, a sound so weak it broke something in my chest. "You have a child." Again, not a question. His eyes had dropped to my chest, and I felt heat flood my face as I realized he could see the telltale damp spots on my uniform, where I'd leaked through my nursing pads. My milk had come in fierce and abundant for a baby I would never feed, my body's cruel joke. That's not... I couldn't form words, couldn't think past the mortification, and the strange danger radiating from this man like heat from asphalt in summer. "My nephew," he said, and something flickered in those dark eyes, something almost human. "He won't eat, won't take formula, won't take anything. 3 days now." He shifted the baby slightly, and I saw the way his large hands cradled the tiny body with surprising gentleness, like he was holding a bomb. "The doctors say there's nothing wrong. He's just refusing." The baby's lips were cracked, his skin papery and dry. 3 days. My nursing training from the single semester of community college I'd managed before my life fell apart kicked in automatically. 3 days without eating for a newborn was critical. Dangerous. "Sir, he needs to go to a hospital. He's been to 5 hospitals." The words came out clipped, final. "The best doctors money can buy. They run tests. They find nothing. They send us away. He's dying, and no one can tell me why." The baby made another sound, barely more than a breath, and I watched his little chest rise and fall too quickly, too shallowly. Without thinking, I reached out, my fingers hovering an inch from the blanket. The man's security detail tensed. I felt, rather than saw, their hands move toward concealed weapons, but he raised one hand in a gesture that froze them in place. "You know something," he said, and it wasn't a question. Those black eyes pinned me like a butterfly to a board. Sometimes babies, they imprint. On a smell, a taste, a feeling. If his mother... I trailed off, not knowing the story, not wanting to overstep. "His mother is dead." The words fell like stones into still water. "She died giving birth to him. Her husband, my brother, died 3 days before that. The boy is alone in this world except for me. And I am watching him fade." There was something in his voice then, beneath the iron control, a hairline fracture in a foundation that held up an empire. Grief, maybe. Or fear of failing at the one thing that mattered. My breasts ached, full and useless, my body making food for a baby who belonged to someone else, somewhere across town with her new parents and her new life. The injustice of it, my abundance in the face of this child's starvation, made my eyes burn. I stopped, the words too insane to speak out loud. But the baby whimpered again, and I thought of my daughter, wondered if she was eating well, if she was warm and loved and fed. My milk just came in. "If he's imprinted on breastfeeding, if that's what he needs." The man's eyes sharpened, something predatory sliding behind his gaze. "You would do this. He's dying," I whispered. "And I have what he needs." For a long moment, he simply stared at me, and I had the distinct feeling of being catalogued, filed away, claimed in some fundamental way. Then he looked around the diner, at the cheap vinyl booths, the cracked linoleum, the grease-stained walls, and something like disgust crossed his features. "Not here." He pulled out a phone, black and sleek, and spoke rapid fire in a language I didn't understand. Then he looked back at me, and I saw the decision made, saw myself becoming part of something I couldn't yet comprehend. "You'll come with me. We have a doctor who can supervise, ensure it's safe." "I can't just leave work. How much do you make in a week?" The question threw me. What? He pulled out a wallet, extracted a stack of bills that looked obscenely thick, and dropped them on the counter. I caught sight of $100 bills, lots of them. "That's for this week. There will be more." "Sir, I don't even know who you are." "Konstantin Volkov." The name landed between us like a grenade. I saw recognition flicker in the face of the trucker 2 booths down, saw him suddenly become very interested in his coffee. "And you will save my nephew's life, or you will tell me now that you cannot. So I may find another solution." The baby chose that moment to cry, a sound so weak and desperate it was barely audible over the hum of the refrigerator. His little fist had escaped the blanket, and I watched it wave in the air, searching for something, someone, to hold on to. I thought of my daughter. I thought of my empty bank account, my eviction notice, my broken dreams. I thought of how I'd pumped and dumped 2 ounces of liquid gold into the diner's sink just an hour ago, because I had nowhere else to put it. No baby to give it to. "Okay," I heard myself say. "Okay, I'll help." Konstantin Volkov's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, satisfaction, or maybe possession. He gestured to one of his men, who immediately moved to the kitchen. I heard a brief conversation, then my manager Pete appeared, his face pale, nodding frantically at whatever he was being told. "Your coat," Konstantin said, and I realized he was giving me an order, not making a request. My hands shook as I untied my apron, grabbed my threadbare jacket from the hook by the kitchen. The money still sat on the counter, more cash than I'd seen in my entire life. When I hesitated, Constantine made another gesture, and one of his men collected it, placed it in an envelope, and handed it to me. Come. He turned toward the door, the baby secured against his chest. I followed, because what else could I do? The cold November air hit me as we stepped outside, and I saw the vehicle waiting, a black SUV with windows so dark they looked like portals to nowhere. The door was already open, and I caught a glimpse of cream leather interior, screens embedded in the seats, the kind of luxury I'd only seen in movies. Constantine slid into the back seat with the fluid grace of a predator, and after a moment's hesitation, I climbed in after him. The door shut with a heavy final thunk, not the tinny sound of my rusted Honda, but the solid closure of German engineering and bulletproof glass. The interior smelled like leather, and that same cologne, and something else. Baby powder, incongruous in this fortress on wheels. One of the security detail took the driver's seat, another the passenger seat. The third SUV I hadn't noticed before pulled up behind us. As we pulled away from Murphy's Diner, away from the only life I knew, I watched the familiar neon sign recede in the side mirror. The baby whimpered in Constantine's arms, and when I looked over, I found those dark eyes watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "What's his name?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Alexei." Something softened in Constantine's face when he said it, just for a moment. "It means defender." My brother wanted him to be strong. The baby, Alexei, turned his head slightly, as if he could sense me, and I saw how his little mouth opened and closed, searching, hoping. My breasts ached in response, my body recognizing what this child needed, even if my mind was still catching up to the insanity of what I'd just agreed to. "How far are we going?" I asked. Constantine looked at me, and in the dim light of the SUV's interior, his face was all shadows and sharp angles. "To my home. You'll have privacy, medical supervision, everything you need." What I needed was my daughter. What I needed was to turn back time to before I'd gotten pregnant by a man who disappeared the moment the test came back positive. What I needed was a life that didn't require me to sell the one thing my body had made for my own child. But needs and reality rarely aligned, and as the SUV carried me deeper into a world I'd only heard about in whispers and news reports, I held that envelope of money against my chest and tried not to think about what I'd just agreed to. Tried not to think about the way Konstantin Volkov's eyes had claimed me as surely as if he'd put his mark on my skin. Tried not to wonder what happened to people who entered his world and tried to leave. The house wasn't a house. It was a fortress disguised as a mansion. All stone and iron and windows that reflected the night sky like black mirrors. We'd driven for 40 minutes, leaving the city lights behind for a sprawling estate hidden behind walls that looked designed to keep out armies. Guards stood at intervals along the perimeter, their earpieces catching the moonlight, as we passed through gates that opened silently at our approach. My heart hammered against my ribs as the SUV pulled into a circular driveway, stopping before massive double doors that looked like they belonged to a cathedral. I clutched the envelope of money so tightly the paper crumpled in my sweating palms. My other hand pressed against the window as I tried to process the scale of wealth on display. The manicured lawns stretched into darkness, fountain sculptures gleaming pale in strategically placed lights, and somewhere in the distance, I heard the bark of dogs, big dogs, trained dogs. "Come." Konstantin was already out of the vehicle, Alexei still cradled against his chest with one arm, while he extended his free hand to me. I stared at that hand, broad palm, long fingers, a silver ring on his right hand carved with symbols I didn't recognize. Taking it felt like accepting a contract I hadn't read, but the baby made another weak sound, and I found myself placing my hand in his. His grip was warm, firm, and he pulled me from the SUV with effortless strength that reminded me how physically powerful he was beneath those expensive suits. The night air was colder here, away from the city's warmth, and I shivered in my thin jacket. Konstantin noticed. He seemed to notice everything, and made a sharp gesture to someone behind me. Before I could process what was happening, a woman appeared from inside the house, older, maybe 60, with steel-gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, and the kind of posture that suggested either military training or decades of discipline. She carried a thick cashmere wrap in a deep burgundy, and without a word, draped it over my shoulders. "This is Irina," Constantine said. My housekeeper. She'll see to your needs. The woman's eyes assessed me with the same intensity as her employer, but where his gaze felt predatory, hers was clinical. She saw my stained uniform, my cheap shoes, the shadows under my eyes, and I watched her catalog every detail of my poverty and exhaustion. Then she nodded once, as if I'd passed some invisible test. The nursery is prepared, Irina said to Constantine, her accent thicker than his. Dr. Petrov is waiting. We entered the house, and I had to stop myself from gasping. The foyer alone was larger than my entire apartment. Marble floors that gleamed like ice, a chandelier dripping crystal overhead, a staircase that curved upward like something from a movie. Paintings lined the walls, real oil paintings in gilded frames, and I caught glimpses of violent scenes, battles, executions, men on horseback with swords drawn. Constantine moved through his domain without pause, and I hurried to keep up, my worn sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. We climbed the stairs, passed through a hallway where our footsteps were swallowed by thick carpet, and finally entered a room that made my breath catch. The nursery was a palace for a prince. A crib carved from dark wood dominated one wall, surrounded by toys and mobiles that probably cost more than my car. Soft lighting bathed everything in a warm glow, and a medical examination table had been set up in one corner, complete with monitors and equipment that looked hospital-grade. A man in his 50s stood beside it, wearing wire-rimmed glasses and the calm expression of someone who'd seen everything and been surprised by nothing. Dr. Petrov, Constantine said, and it was clearly an introduction for my benefit. The doctor approached, his eyes kind behind his glasses. You're the young woman who's going to help us? His English was perfect, barely accented. Yes, I think so. My voice sounded small in this enormous room. Irina told me your situation, he said gently. 6 weeks postpartum, milk supply established. Have you experienced any complications? Mastitis, infection, excessive pain? The clinical questions helped ground me. This was familiar territory. Medical history, symptoms, the safe language of healthcare. No complications. Everything's normal. Except I'm not feeding anyone. Something flickered in his expression. Pity, maybe, or understanding. And you've been pumping? When I can. At work, mostly just in the bathroom. I felt heat flood my face. I've been dumping it. I didn't know what else to do with it. Constantine made a sound, low in his throat, and when I glanced at him, I saw something dark in his expression. Anger, but not at me. At the waste, maybe. At the injustice of my abundance while his nephew starved. Let me examine Alexei first, Dr. Petrov said, moving toward Constantine. Then we'll discuss the safest way to proceed. I watched as Constantine carefully, almost reverently, placed the baby on the examination table. Under the bright lights, Alexei looked even more fragile. Skin pale and papery, lips cracked, his little chest rising and falling too fast. The doctor worked efficiently, checking vitals, examining the baby's mouth, listening to his heart and lungs with a stethoscope. He's dehydrated. Dr. Petrov confirmed what we all already knew. Another 12 hours, maybe less, and we'd need to hospitalize him with IV fluids. But Constantine is right. Medically, there's nothing wrong. No allergies, no digestive issues, no physical reason he shouldn't take formula. Then why won't he eat? I asked. The doctor glanced at Constantine before answering. Sometimes, after trauma, and birth itself is traumatic, let alone losing both parents, babies can develop what we call failure to thrive. They simply give up, refuse to engage with life. It's psychological, not physical. He's 3 weeks old, I whispered. How can a 3-week-old give up? Because he knows, Constantine said softly, and when I looked at him, I saw that fracture again, that glimpse of something human beneath the granite. He knows his mother is gone. He knows his father is dead. He knows he's alone. The raw pain in those words made my throat tight. I thought of my daughter, wondered if she'd sensed my grief when I held her those first few hours, if she'd felt my love and my despair in equal measure. But he's not alone, I heard myself say. You're here. Constantine's eyes met mine, and for a moment, the air between us felt charged, dangerous. I'm not enough. I don't know how to... He gestured helplessly at the baby, and I realized this man, this powerful, dangerous man who commanded fear with his presence, was terrified of this tiny, helpless creature. Dr. Petrov cleared his throat. If Maya is willing, we should attempt feeding now. Alexei's window is closing. Reality crashed back over me. Right. I was here to feed a stranger's baby with milk meant for my own child. I was here because I was desperate and broken, and this man had offered me more money than I'd make in months. What do I do? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Irina stepped forward with a cushioned rocking chair I hadn't noticed before, positioning it near the examination table. Sit, she said, not unkindly. Be comfortable. I sat, the cashmere wrap falling away as I did. My hands went to the buttons of my uniform, and suddenly I was hyper-aware of the 3 people, 4, counting the baby, watching me. Heat flooded my face. Privacy, Konstantin said sharply, and Dr. Petrov immediately turned toward his equipment, making himself busy. Irina moved to adjust the lighting, dimming it slightly. But Konstantin didn't look away. His dark eyes stayed fixed on me, and I felt that gaze like a brand. You too, I managed to say. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, that I'd dare give him an order in his own house. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of his mouth lifted in what might have been the ghost of a smile. I stay. He's my nephew. I need to see that he's safe. There was no arguing with that tone. And truthfully, if our positions were reversed, I wouldn't have left either. I fumbled with my buttons, my fingers clumsy with nervousness, until finally, I managed to open my uniform enough to access my nursing bra. The dampness was visible on the fabric, and I saw Konstantin's eyes track to it. Saw something shift in his expression. With shaking hands, I unclasped one side of the bra, and my breast spilled free, heavy and full. I'd leaked through the nursing pad again, and I felt exposed in a way that went beyond physical nakedness. This was my body's most intimate function on display for strangers. Bring him, I whispered. Konstantin moved with surprising gentleness, lifting Alexei from the examination table and crossing to where I sat. Up close, I could smell that cologne again, mixed with the baby powder scent clinging to his suit. He carefully, awkwardly, tried to position the baby in my arms, and I saw how uncertain he was, how his hands shook slightly. Like this, I said softly, guiding Alexei's head toward my breast. Support his neck. Let him find. The moment my nipple brushed Alexei's lips, everything changed. The baby's eyes, closed until now, flickered open, unfocused but searching. His mouth opened instinctively, rooting, and when I guided him to latch, he took it with a desperate hunger that made my breath catch. The sensation was intense, painful at first, then settling into the familiar tug and pull I remembered from the brief hours I'd nursed my own daughter before the adoption agency took her away. My milk let down with a rush that made me gasp, and Alexei made a small sound, not quite a cry, but something more primal. Relief, maybe, or recognition. He drank like he was dying of thirst, which I supposed he was. His little hands, which had been limp and listless, suddenly came up to press against my breast, kneading instinctively. I watched his throat work as he swallowed, watched color start to return to his pale cheeks. He's eating, Konstantin breathed, and the wonder in his voice made me look up. He was staring at his nephew with an expression of such raw emotion it hurt to witness. Relief, yes, but also something deeper, love, fierce and protective and absolute. This was a man who would burn the world for this child, and somehow I'd become part of that equation. His vitals are improving, Dr. Petrov said quietly from where he monitored the equipment. Heart rate stabilizing, respiration evening out. This is remarkable. I looked down at Alexei, at this tiny stranger who nursed at my breast like he'd known me his whole short life. Tears burned in my eyes, and I couldn't tell if they were from grief for my own daughter or joy that I could save this one. Maybe both. Konstantin lowered himself to a crouch beside the chair, bringing his face level with mine. This close, I could see flecks of gray in his dark eyes, could see the faint scar along his jawline, could count his eyelashes if I wanted to. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away. and his fingers brushed Alexei's cheek with devastating gentleness. "You're saving his life," he said, his voice rough. "You understand what that means to me? I didn't understand anything, not why I was here, not what I'd gotten myself into, not how my life had pivoted so dramatically in the space of an hour. But I nodded anyway, because Alexei was drinking, and for the first time in 6 weeks, my milk was going to the purpose nature intended. "How long does he need to feed?" Konstantin asked. 10, 15 minutes per side, usually," I said. "If he'll take both. And then? Then we wait and see. If he keeps it down, if he wants more." I trailed off, the implications hitting me. This isn't a one-time thing. Babies eat every 2 to 3 hours. If he's really imprinted on breastfeeding, if that's the only way he'll eat. Konstantin's eyes held mine, and I saw understanding dawn there. "Then you'll need to stay." The words hung between us like a sentence. Stay in this mansion, in this world of violence and wealth and danger. Stay and feed a child who wasn't mine while my own daughter grew up somewhere across the city. Stay in the orbit of this dangerous, magnetic man who looked at me like I was simultaneously savior and prey. "I have a life," I said weakly. "A job, an apartment." "The apartment you're being evicted from?" His words were soft, but cut like knives. "The job that pays minimum wage and leaves you pumping milk in a bathroom stall? The life that's falling apart while you pretend everything is fine?" I flinched, hating that he'd seen through me so easily, hating that he was right. "I can give you more than money," Konstantin continued, his hand still resting on Alexei's cheek, his eyes never leaving mine. "Security, protection, a place to heal from whatever broke you badly enough that you'd give away your own child." The tears spilled over then, and I couldn't stop them. "You don't know anything about me. I know you're alone. I know you're desperate. I know you have milk for a baby you'll never see again, and that's killing you from the inside out." His free hand came up, and I tensed, but he only wiped away one tear with his thumb, the gesture shockingly intimate. "I know you walked into my life tonight like an answer to a prayer I didn't know how to say." Alexei made a satisfied sound, his suckling slowing as his tiny stomach filled. I felt the pull change, felt him drift from desperate hunger to contented nursing, and the instinct to hold him closer was overwhelming. "What are you asking me?" I whispered. "Stay," Konstantin said simply. "Feed my nephew. Let me take care of you while you take care of him. And when this is over, when Alexei is strong enough to transition to formula, you'll walk away with enough money to start the life you deserve." It should have sounded like a business transaction. It should have felt cold and transactional, but the way he looked at me, like I was something precious, something worth protecting, made it feel like something else entirely. Something dangerous, something I should run from, something I knew I wouldn't. "Okay," I heard myself say for the second time that night. "Okay, I'll stay." The room Irina led me to after that first feeding could have housed 3 of my apartments. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, draped in silk the color of champagne, and French doors opened onto a balcony overlooking gardens I could barely see in the darkness. My threadbare duffel bag, retrieved from my apartment by one of Konstantin's men, while I'd fed Alexei a second time, looked obscene on the antique dresser, a reminder of the 2 worlds colliding. "You'll feed the baby every 3 hours, Irina had explained in her clipped, efficient way. "Dr. Petrov will monitor both of you. Mr. Volkov has arranged for proper clothes to arrive tomorrow. For now, rest when you can. Rest." As if I could sleep in this palace, in these silk sheets that probably cost more than my monthly rent. As if I could quiet my mind enough to stop replaying the moment Konstantin's thumb had wiped away my tear, the way his eyes had claimed me with that single word. Stay. I'd unpacked my few belongings, 2 pairs of jeans, some t-shirts, toiletries from the dollar store, and took a shower in the marble bathroom attached to my room. The water pressure alone was a luxury, and I stood under the spray until my skin turned pink, trying to wash away the surreal feeling that I'd stepped into someone else's life. At 2 a.m., a soft knock woke me from the light doze I'd fallen into. Irina stood in the hallway, her expression neutral. "The baby is awake." I followed her through the silent house, my bare feet sinking into carpet, past rooms closed off behind heavy doors. past paintings of stern-faced men who seemed to judge me with oil paint eyes. The nursery glowed with soft light. And there was Konstantin, pacing with Alexei against his shoulder, murmuring something in Russian that sounded like a lullaby. He looked different without his suit jacket, his white shirt untucked and sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars. His hair was mussed, like he'd been running his hands through it, and the vulnerability of seeing him this way, rumpled, worried, human, made my chest tighten. "He's fussing," Konstantin said when he saw me, and there was something almost apologetic in his tone. "I tried the bottle, but it's okay." I settled into the rocking chair that had already become familiar, unbuttoning the silk pajama top Irina had left for me. It was too expensive, too fine, and I felt like an imposter wearing it. Konstantin brought Alexei to me, and our fingers brushed as he transferred the baby into my arms. The contact sent electricity up my arm, and I saw his eyes darken, saw him feel it too, but he stepped back, giving me space, though his gaze stayed fixed on us as Alexei latched eagerly. "You should sleep," I said softly. "I can handle this. I don't sleep much." He lowered himself into a chair positioned near mine, close enough that I could smell his cologne, could feel his presence like heat from a fire. "Haven't since my brother died." The pain in those words was raw, unguarded. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "What happened?" For a long moment I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "He trusted the wrong person. Someone in our organization, someone close to us, betrayed him for money, sold information to our enemies about a shipment route. They ambushed him, and..." He stopped, jaw clenched. "They made sure he suffered before they killed him." I thought of the violence hinted at in those paintings downstairs, in the guards with their concealed weapons, in the fortress-like walls around this estate. This wasn't my world. These weren't my problems. But Alexei nursed at my breast, innocent and perfect. And he was caught in the middle of it all. "The baby's father?" I asked carefully. "His name was Dmitri." Konstantin's voice softened when he said it. "My younger brother. He was supposed to be the good one, the one who got out, who went to university, who married a nice girl, and had a normal life. But our world doesn't let go easily. When Alexei's mother got pregnant, Dmitri came to me, asked to be brought back into the family business. Said he needed to provide, to protect his son. And you let him. I gave him a position. Something safe, I thought. Managing legitimate businesses, staying away from the dangerous work." His laugh was bitter. "But the man who betrayed him, Sergei, he'd been with our family for 20 years. I trusted him. We all did. He knew everything, including exactly how to hurt us where it would do the most damage." "Did you find him?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. Konstantin's smile was cold, predatory. "Sergei is no longer a problem." The implication hung in the air between us, and I should have been horrified, should have grabbed Alexei and run, but instead, I felt a dark satisfaction that justice, brutal as it might have been, had been served. "Alexei's mother?" I prompted. "Natalia." His expression shifted to something softer. "She was good for Dmitri, gentle, kind, like him. When he died, she went into labor early. The grief, the stress. The doctors couldn't stop it. And there were complications. She hemorrhaged." He paused, his hands clenching into fists. "She lived long enough to hold Alexei once. Long enough to make me promise I'd protect him, raise him, give him the life Dmitri wanted for him." My throat burned with unshed tears. "That's why you're so desperate to save him." "He's all I have left of my brother. All I have left of anything good in this world." Konstantin leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and the raw emotion in his face was almost too intimate to witness. "I've built an empire, Maya. I have money, power, men who'd die at my command. But I couldn't save my brother, couldn't save Natalia, and I was watching Alexei slip away too. And there was nothing I could do, until now," I said softly. His eyes met mine, intense and burning, "until you." The weight of his gratitude, his need, his barely contained desperation, it pressed down on me like a physical thing. Alexei had finished nursing and fallen asleep against my chest, milk-drunk and peaceful, and I carefully shifted him to burp against my shoulder. "What will you do?" I asked. "When he's older, when he asks about his parents, I'll tell him the truth, that his father was a good man who died protecting what he loved. That his mother was brave and kind, and wanted him more than anything, and that he has an uncle who will burn the world to keep him safe." The vehemence in those words should have frightened me. Instead, I found myself wanting to reach out, to offer comfort to this dangerous man who carried so much grief behind his cold exterior. "He's lucky to have you," I said instead. Constantine stood, moving closer, and gently took the sleeping baby from my arms. His fingers brushed my bare shoulder where the silk pajama top had slipped down, and I felt that touch everywhere, felt my body respond in ways that had nothing to do with nursing or motherhood. "No," he said quietly, his eyes holding mine as he cradled Alexei. "I'm lucky to have found you." The days that followed blurred into a rhythm I'd never expected. Every 3 hours, day and night, I fed Alexei while Constantine watched like a guardian angel, or maybe a possessive demon. Dr. Petrov monitored us both, pronouncing Alexei's recovery nothing short of miraculous, and my health excellent, despite the demands. Clothes arrived on the second day. Not the cheap, practical items I'd expected, but beautiful things in soft fabrics, all in my size: cashmere sweaters, silk blouses, jeans that actually fit, and nursing bras that didn't dig into my skin. I tried to refuse them, but Irina simply left them in my room with a look that said arguing was pointless. On the third day, Constantine appeared at breakfast, a meal I'd been taking in the dining room that could seat 20, feeling absurdly small at one end of the massive table. "Come with me," he said without preamble. I followed him through the house to a room I hadn't seen before, his office, all dark wood and leather, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the grounds. He gestured to a chair across from his desk, and I sat, nerves fluttering. "The money I gave you at the diner," he began, pulling out a folder. "That was an advance. I want to formalize our arrangement." He slid a document across the desk. I stared at the numbers, my brain refusing to process them at first. $10,000 a week for as long as Alexei needed me. "This is too much," I breathed. "It's not nearly enough for what you're giving him." Constantine leaned back in his chair, studying me. "You're saving his life, Maya. There's no price I can put on that." "But this," he tapped the contract, "this ensures you're taken care of. That when you leave here, you have options." Leave. The word echoed strangely, because somewhere in the past 3 days, this place had started to feel less like a prison and more like a sanctuary. No one here judged me for my grief or my mistakes. No one pitied me. I was needed, essential, and it had been so long since I'd felt that way. "What about after?" I asked. "When Alexei doesn't need me anymore?" Something flickered in Constantine's eyes. Was it regret? "Then you're free to go. With enough money to start over, go back to school. Do whatever you want with your life." I should have signed immediately, should have grabbed this lifeline with both hands. But something made me hesitate, made me ask. "And if I want to stay involved? Check on him? Make sure he's okay?" Constantine went very still. "You'd want that?" "I'm feeding him," I said simply. "That creates a bond, whether we want it to or not. I can't just walk away and never think about him again." He stood, moving around the desk with that predatory grace, and suddenly he was close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "If you stay involved, Maya, you stay in my world. You understand what that means?" I thought of the guards, the guns, the walls. Thought of Dmitri and Natalia, of violence and betrayal and danger lurking in shadows. "I understand. Do you?" He reached out, his hand cupping my jaw, thumb brushing my cheekbone. The touch was gentle but possessive, and my breath caught. "Because once you're part of this family, once you're under my protection, you don't leave. Not without my permission, not without consequences." I should have been terrified, should have pulled away, signed the contract, and counted down the days until I could escape. But his touch ignited something in me. Something I'd thought died when I gave away my daughter. when I accepted that I'd never be enough, never be wanted, never be chosen. Maybe I don't want to leave, I whispered. His eyes darkened, and for a moment, I thought he might kiss me. His gaze dropped to my lips, and I felt the air between us charged with something dangerous and inevitable. But then Alexei's cry echoed through the house via the monitor on Konstantin's desk, and the spell broke. He stepped back, and I saw him physically collect himself, saw the walls slam back into place. Sign the contract. Feed my nephew. We'll discuss the rest later. I signed with shaking hands, and as I left his office, I felt his eyes on me like a brand. Felt the weight of choices I was making without fully understanding their cost. A week became 2. Alexei thrived, gaining weight, his skin taking on a healthy glow, his cries becoming more robust and demanding. I fell into the role of his caretaker easily. Too easily. Between feedings, I'd hold him, sing to him, watch him discover his own hands with wonder in his dark eyes that reminded me so much of his uncle's. Konstantin was always there, hovering, watching, his presence a constant that should have felt intrusive, but instead felt right. He learned to change diapers with the same focused intensity he probably brought to business deals. He mastered the art of the swaddle, and sometimes, late at night when I fed Alexei, Konstantin would read aloud in Russian. Poetry, I thought, though I didn't understand the words. Just the sound of his voice, deep and melodic, wrapping around us like a lullaby. "What are you reading?" I asked one night, Alexei nearly asleep in my arms. "Pushkin," Konstantin replied. "Russian poet. My mother used to read him to me and Dmitri when we were young before..." He stopped. "Before what?" "Before my father decided we needed to be men instead of boys. Before the poetry turned to violence and bedtime stories became lessons in survival. I heard the bitterness, the loss of innocence. Is that the life you want for Alexei?" "No." The word was fierce, absolute. "He'll know our history, our culture, but he'll also have choices. College if he wants. Art, music, whatever makes him happy. Dmitri wanted that for him, and I'll make sure he gets it, even if it means he leaves this world." Konstantin's eyes met mine over Alexei's sleeping form. "Even then, though I'll make sure he knows how to protect himself. The Volkov name comes with enemies, whether he wants it or not." I thought about that. About Alexei growing up with bodyguards and bulletproof cars. About him never knowing the simple freedom of anonymity. "That's not fair to him. Life isn't fair, Maya. You of all people should know that." The words stung because they were true. Life wasn't fair. Fair would have been keeping my daughter, raising her in love even if we were poor. Fair would have been her father sticking around instead of disappearing. Fair would have been a million different things. "I'm sorry," Konstantin said quietly, seeing my expression shift. That was cruel. It was honest. I carefully stood, Alexei sleeping soundly against my shoulder. I should put him down, but as I moved past Konstantin, his hand caught my wrist, gentle but firm. "Wait." I stopped, my pulse jumping at his touch. We were close enough that I could see the shadow of stubble on his jaw, could count his heartbeat in the pulse at his throat. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice low. "There's been talk in my organization about you." Ice slid down my spine. "What kind of talk?" "Some of my men think you're a liability, an outsider who knows too much, who's seen too much. They want me to..." He stopped, jaw clenching. "To what?" I whispered, though I could guess. "To make sure you can't leave, to ensure your silence, one way or another." His thumb brushed the inside of my wrist, finding my racing pulse. "I've told them you're under my protection, that anyone who touches you answers to me. But Maya, you need to understand. My world is not safe, not for someone like you. Someone like me? Innocent. Good. Untouched by the violence that defines everything I do." I thought of my daughter, given away because I couldn't provide for her. Thought of pumping milk in diner bathrooms and counting coins for bus fare. Thought of every man who'd looked through me like I was invisible. Every landlord who'd threatened eviction. Every closed door and dead end. "I'm not as innocent as you think," I said. And maybe I'm tired of being safe and invisible and forgettable. Maybe I want to matter to someone, even if that someone is dangerous. Konstantin's grip on my wrist tightened, his eyes blazing. You matter, Maya. To Alexei. To me, more than you should. The confession hung between us, weighted with implications I wasn't ready to examine. I should go, I whispered. Put him to bed. This time, Konstantin let me go. But I felt his eyes follow me out of the nursery, felt the promise of something inevitable building between us like a storm on the horizon. The threat came on a Tuesday morning. 3 weeks into my stay at the Volkov estate, I was in the nursery with Alexei, singing softly while he nursed, when the sound of raised voices downstairs shattered the peaceful moment. Not just voices, shouting in Russian, sharp and angry, followed by the unmistakable sound of furniture breaking. Alexei startled against my breast, his little face scrunching in distress, and I held him closer, my heart hammering. The door burst open. Konstantin filled the doorway, his face a mask of cold fury. But when he saw us, saw me frozen in the rocking chair with Alexei, something shifted in his expression. Behind him, I glimpsed 2 of his men restraining someone, blood on the marble floor. Pack a bag, Konstantin said, his voice deadly calm. Now. We're leaving. What's happening? Now, Maya. The command in his voice left no room for argument. I quickly burped Alexei and handed him to Irina, who'd appeared silently behind Konstantin. My hands shook as I fumbled with my nursing bra, buttoning my shirt with clumsy fingers. Konstantin waited, his eyes never leaving the doorway, his hand resting at his side where I now knew he kept a gun. In my room, I threw clothes into my duffel with shaking hands. Through the window, I saw more SUVs pulling up, men in dark suits moving with military precision across the grounds. Something was very, very wrong. Konstantin appeared in my doorway. 5 minutes. Whatever you need, grab it now. What's going on? I demanded, fear making me bold. Is it about me? Those men you mentioned. It's about all of us. He moved into the room, began checking windows with practiced efficiency. One of my warehouses was hit tonight. The attack was coordinated, professional. They knew exactly where to strike, when, how many men I had stationed there. His jaw clenched. We still have a traitor, and if they know about the warehouse, they know about you. The implication hit me like ice water. They know I'm here. They know about Alexei. Yes. He turned to face me, and the naked fear in his eyes was more terrifying than anything else. I have a safe house, completely off the grid. We go there until I can eliminate the threat. We? You think I'm letting you out of my sight? His voice was rough. You and Alexei are the only things that matter right now. Everything else, the business, the organization, the money, none of it means anything if I lose either of you. The raw honesty in those words stole my breath. Before I could respond, he crossed to me, his hands cupping my face with surprising gentleness. I will keep you safe, Maya, both of you. I swear it on my brother's grave. Then his mouth was on mine, hard and desperate and claiming. The kiss was nothing like I'd imagined. No practiced seduction, no careful manipulation. This was need and fear, and something darker, something possessive that should have terrified me, but instead made me melt against him. His hands tangled in my hair, his body pressing mine against the wall, and I tasted desperation on his lips, felt the tremor in his hands. When he pulled back, we were both breathing hard. I'm sorry, he said roughly. I had no right. Shut up, I whispered, and pulled him back down. This time the kiss was slower, deeper, and I felt something inside me crack open. All the loneliness, the grief, the desperate need to be wanted flooding out. His hands slid down my sides, careful, reverent, like I was something precious he was afraid of breaking. A sharp knock on the doorframe broke us apart. One of Konstantin's men stood there, his expression carefully neutral. Sir, the cars are ready. Konstantin stepped back, his mask sliding into place, but his eyes stayed on me, dark and burning. Let's go. The safe house was 2 hours outside the city, hidden in dense woods at the end of a road that looked more like a deer path. The building itself was modest compared to the estate, a sprawling cabin built of stone and timber, with reinforced doors and windows that I suspected were bulletproof. Guards took up positions around the perimeter as we pulled up, their presence both reassuring and terrifying. Inside, the cabin was surprisingly warm. A fire already blazed in the stone fireplace, and I saw that someone had prepared for our arrival. The kitchen stocked, bedrooms made up, Alexei's supplies unpacked in a nursery that was smaller but no less equipped than the one we'd left behind. "How long do we stay here?" I asked, as Irina settled Alexei in his crib. The baby had slept through most of the journey, blissfully unaware of the danger surrounding him, until it's safe. Konstantin stood at the window, staring out into the darkness. "My men are hunting the traitor as we speak. When we find him..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. "And if you don't find him..." He turned to face me, and in the firelight, his features looked carved from stone. "Then we disappear. New identities, new country. I have resources everywhere. Alexei will be safe, and so will you." The casual way he said it, like uprooting our entire lives was just another business decision, reminded me how different our worlds truly were. "You'd really do that? Give up everything you've built?" In a heartbeat. He moved closer, and I saw the truth of it in his eyes. "Power, money, reputation. They're just things, Maya. They can be rebuilt. But you..." He reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek. "Alexei needs you. And I..." "What?" I whispered. "What do you need?" His hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer. "You," he said simply. "I need you. Not just for Alexei, though God knows he'd die without you. I need you because when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to be human, to want something more than revenge and power, to care about someone so much it terrifies me." My breath caught. "Konstantin, I know it's insane. I know I have no right to feel this way about you. You came here to feed my nephew, not to..." He stopped, jaw clenching. "But I can't stop thinking about you, can't stop wanting you. And after that kiss, after feeling you kiss me back, I know you feel it too. I should have denied it, should have put distance between us, reminded him that this was a job, a transaction, nothing more. But I was so tired of lying, of pretending I hadn't noticed the way he looked at me, the way his presence made my skin feel too tight, the way I'd started counting the minutes until I'd see him again. "This is crazy," I breathed. "You're a crime boss. I'm a broke waitress. We're from completely different worlds. Fuck the worlds." The vehemence in his voice shocked me. "I don't care about any of that. I care that you're brave and kind, and you saved the most important person in my life. I care that you understand loss the way I do. I care that when you look at me, you see past the monster everyone else sees. I don't think you're a monster." "Then what am I?" I looked at him, really looked, and saw past the expensive clothes and the dangerous reputation to the man beneath. The man who read poetry to his nephew, who'd grieved his brother so deeply he'd nearly lost himself, who was willing to give up everything to protect the people he loved. "You're someone who's been hurt," I said softly. "Someone who's built walls so high you forgot what it feels like to let someone in. Someone who's terrified of losing anything else you care about." Something raw and vulnerable crossed his face. "And you're someone who gave away a piece of her heart and has been bleeding ever since. Someone who deserves so much more than the scraps life has thrown at you. Someone I want to give the world to, if you'd let me." Tears burned in my eyes. "I don't need the world, Konstantin. I just need..." "What?" He was so close now, his forehead resting against mine. "Tell me what you need, Maya, to matter," I whispered. "To be chosen. To not feel invisible anymore." His arms came around me, pulling me against his chest, and I felt his heart hammering against my ear. "You matter," he said fiercely. "You matter to Alexei. You matter to me. And I choose you, Maya. Every day, every moment, I choose you." I tilted my head back, and when he kissed me this time, it was different. Slower, deeper, like he was memorizing the taste of me. His hand slid under my shirt, warm against my skin, and I gasped against his mouth, my body responding to his touch with an intensity that stole my breath. "Tell me to stop. he murmured against my lips. Tell me this is wrong, that we're moving too fast, that I'm taking advantage. Don't stop. I breathed, and I felt him shudder against me. He lifted me easily, carrying me toward one of the bedrooms, and I wrapped my legs around his waist, my hands tangling in his hair. The door closed behind us, and in the darkness broken only by moonlight through the window, Constantine laid me on the bed like I was something sacred. I need to tell you something first, he said, his weight settling over me, careful not to crush me, about why I'm so protective, why I'm so desperate to keep you safe. Tell me later, I said, pulling him down for another kiss. But he resisted, his hand catching mine, pressing it against his chest where I could feel his heart racing. No. You need to know now, before this goes further, because once I have you, Maya, once I claim you the way I want to, I won't let you go. Ever. The possessiveness in his voice should have scared me. Instead, it ignited something primal, something that had been dormant too long. Then don't let go. You don't understand. His voice was rough with emotion. In my world, there are rules. When a man claims a woman under his protection, when he takes her to his bed, she becomes his. Not in some romantic, temporary way. She becomes part of his family, his organization. She bears his name and his children and his secrets. There's no walking away from that, not without consequences. I thought about what he was really saying, that if I let this happen, if I gave myself to him, I'd be bound to this dangerous world forever. No more anonymity, no more invisibility. I'd be Konstantin Volkov's woman, with everything that entailed. What if I want that? I whispered. What if I'm tired of being alone, of being broken, of feeling like I don't belong anywhere? What if I want to belong to someone who'll fight for me the way you fight for Alexei? His control snapped. I felt it in the way his mouth crashed down on mine, in the way his hands trembled as they peeled away my clothes, in the desperate sound he made when our bare skin finally met. He worshipped every inch of me with his hands and mouth, murmuring words in Russian that sounded like prayers or curses or promises. When he finally made me his, it was with a tenderness that broke me apart and put me back together as something new, something stronger, something claimed and cherished and fiercely protected. Afterward, as I lay in his arms with moonlight painting silver across our tangled limbs, he pressed a kiss to my temple and said, "You're mine now, Maya. Mine to protect, mine to care for, mine to love, and I'll kill anyone who tries to take you from me." The words should have terrified me. Instead, I pressed closer, my hand over his heart, and whispered, "Promise?" His arms tightened around me. I swear it on everything I am. We stayed at the safe house for 5 days while Konstantin's men hunted the traitor. During that time, the world narrowed to just the 3 of us, me, Konstantin, and Alexei. I fed the baby every 3 hours while Konstantin watched with possessive satisfaction, his hand always finding mine, his eyes always tracking my movements. At night, after Alexei was asleep, Konstantin would pull me to his bed and make love to me with an intensity that left me breathless. He learned every sound I made, every touch that made me gasp, every whispered word that made me melt. And I learned him, the scars on his body and the stories behind them, the nightmares that woke him gasping, the way he clung to me like I was his anchor in a storm. On the 5th day, his phone rang. He answered in rapid Russian, his expression hardening, and I knew before he spoke that the waiting was over. "They found him," Konstantin said, ending the call. "The traitor. He's been handled." I didn't ask what that meant. I didn't want to know. "It's safe to go home?" I asked instead. He crossed to me, pulling me into his arms. "It's safe. But Maya, I need to know. Is this home for you now? The estate, Alexei? Me? Or was this just survival, just making the best of a dangerous situation?" I looked up at this dangerous, damaged man who'd somehow become my entire world. "Take me home, Konstantin. Our home." The smile that crossed his face was devastating in its joy. "Our home," he repeated, like he was testing the words. Then he kissed me, deep and claiming, and I tasted promise in it, promise of a future I'd never dared imagine. 6 months later, I stood in the nursery watching Alexei, no longer the fragile, dying infant I'd first held, but a healthy, chunky baby with his uncle's dark eyes and his father's gentle smile. He sat in his playpen, babbling to himself as he grabbed at colorful toys, his laughter filling the room like music. "He's getting so big," Irina said from the doorway, her stern expression softening as she watched him. Over the months, she'd become something like a grandmother to Alexei, and surprisingly, a friend to me. "Soon he won't need you to nurse anymore." The thought should have filled me with relief. Freedom from the every 3-hour schedule, my body returning fully to my own control. Instead, I felt a pang of loss. Nursing Alexei had become more than nutrition. It was connection, love, a way of mothering the child I'd given away, channeled into caring for one who desperately needed it. "Dr. Petrov says we can start weaning him to formula soon," I said softly. "Mixing breast milk with bottles, gradually transitioning him. And then what?" Irina asked, her sharp eyes seeing too much. "You leave?" I looked down at the ring on my left hand. A massive diamond surrounded by sapphires that caught the light like captured stars. Constantine had proposed 2 months ago. Not with romantic fanfare, but with quiet certainty as we lay tangled together in his bed. "Marry me," he'd said, his hand splayed possessively over my stomach. "Make it official. Make it permanent. Be my wife, Alexei's mother, the queen of everything I've built." I'd said yes before he finished speaking, and the joy in his eyes had been worth more than the obscene ring he'd slipped onto my finger the next morning. "I'm not going anywhere," I told Irina. "This is my home now, my family." She nodded, satisfied, and left me alone with Alexei. I lifted him from the playpen, breathing in his baby scent, milk and powder and pure innocence. He grabbed a fistful of my hair, gurgling happily, and my heart swelled so full it hurt. The life I'd stumbled into that night at Murphy's Diner had consumed me completely. I'd learned to navigate Constantine's world. The dangerous men who came to the house for meetings, the weapons hidden throughout the estate, the occasional sound of gunfire from the shooting range Constantine used to train his men. I'd learned which questions not to ask, which rooms to avoid when business was being conducted, which of Constantine's associates I could trust, and which I should never be alone with. But I'd also learned what it meant to be cherished. Constantine lavished me with everything: clothes, jewelry, a new car I was almost afraid to drive, but more than material things, he gave me his time, his attention, his fierce protection. He'd enrolled me in online classes to finish my degree, hired tutors when I struggled with subjects. He'd tracked down information about my daughter. Not enough to violate the adoption agreement, but enough to know she was healthy, happy, thriving with her new family. "She's loved," he'd told me, holding me as I cried with relief and grief in equal measure. "Just like you love Alexei, just like I love you." The sound of the door opening pulled me from my thoughts. Constantine entered, still in the suit he'd worn to a business meeting, his tie loosened and his hair slightly mussed. His eyes found mine immediately, that dark, possessive gaze that still made my breath catch, and something in his expression made my pulse quicken. "We need to talk," he said, his voice carefully neutral. Ice slid through my veins. In Constantine's world, those words rarely meant anything good. "What's wrong?" He crossed to me, taking Alexei gently and placing him back in the playpen with toys to occupy him. Then he turned to me, his hands finding my waist, pulling me close. "Nothing's wrong. But there's something you need to know, something I should have told you months ago." "You're scaring me. Don't be scared." His thumbs rubbed circles on my hip bones, soothing. "Remember the night we came to the safe house? When I said I needed to tell you something?" I nodded, my throat tight. "I told you that in my world, when a man claims a woman, she becomes his. What I didn't tell you was why I was so desperate to claim you, beyond just wanting you." He paused, his jaw clenching. "There were men in my organization who saw you as a threat, an outsider who knew too much. They wanted you eliminated, Maya, dead and buried where you couldn't talk to authorities or rival families." Horror washed over me. "What?" "I couldn't let that happen. So I did the only thing I could. I claimed you publicly, made it known that you were under my personal protection, that you belong to me, in our world that made you untouchable. Anyone who harmed you would be declaring war on me personally. You used me, I whispered, pulling back. You slept with me to protect me from your own men? No. His grip tightened, not letting me retreat. I slept with you because I was falling in love with you and couldn't fight it anymore. The protection was just a convenient side effect. But Maya, you need to understand, the moment I brought you into my home, the moment you fed Alexei, you became a target. I had to make a choice. Let them kill you, or bind you to me so completely that hurting you meant going through me. You should have told me, I said, anger and fear warring in my chest. You should have given me a choice. You're right. His forehead dropped to mine, his breath warm on my lips. I should have. But I was terrified that if I told you how dangerous it was, you'd run. And I couldn't lose you. Not when I just found you. I thought about that night, about the desperation in his kiss, the possessiveness in his touch. The ring, I said slowly. The proposal. Was that real, or just more protection? Pain flashed in his eyes. How can you even ask me that? Maya, I love you. I love you so much it terrifies me. The ring, the proposal, planning our wedding, that's all real. That's me wanting to spend the rest of my life with you, wanting to give you my name and my protection and everything I am. But if I hadn't been in danger, would you still have wanted to marry me? Or was I just a convenient mother for Alexei? Look at me. He cupped my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. I fell in love with you the night you walked into my life and offered to save my nephew without asking for anything in return. I fell deeper every time you sang to him, every time you looked at me like I was more than just a monster with money. I want to marry you because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Because when I think about the future, you're in every vision. You and Alexei, and the children I want to give you, the life I want to build with you. Tears spilled down my cheeks. Children? A small smile curved his lips. Did you think I wouldn't notice you stopped taking the birth control pills Dr. Petrov prescribed? That I wouldn't see the way you look at pregnancy tests in store windows? Or how your hand goes to your stomach sometimes like you're imagining it swollen with my child? Heat flooded my face. I wasn't sure you'd want more children. With your life, the danger, I want everything with you. His hand slid to my stomach, pressing gently. I want to see you pregnant with our baby. Want to watch you nurse our child the way you nursed Alexei. Want to fill this house with children and love and laughter until we forget what the silence sounded like. Constantine. I couldn't speak past the emotion clogging my throat. Marry me, he said again, even though I'd already said yes months ago. Not because it's practical or protective, but because you want this life with me, because you love me the way I love you. Desperately, completely, forever. I do love you, I whispered. God help me. I love you so much it scares me. You're dangerous and possessive, and you've done terrible things. But when you look at me, I feel like I matter, like I'm not invisible anymore. You've never been invisible, Moya Lyubov. The Russian endearment rolled off his tongue like honey. You walked into my life like an answer to a prayer, and I will spend the rest of my days making sure you know how precious you are. He kissed me then, deep and claiming, and I tasted promise in it, promise of a future built on more than survival, more than convenience, a future built on love, complicated and dangerous, and absolutely real. Alexei made a demanding sound from his playpen, and we broke apart, laughing. Constantine lifted his nephew, tossing him gently in the air until the baby shrieked with delight. You know, I said, watching them together, my heart so full it might burst. I came here thinking I was just going to feed a baby and earn some money. I never imagined that you'd become everything to us. Constantine finished, pulling me against his side so I was wrapped in both his arms and Alexei's reaching hands. That's the thing about fate, Maya. Sometimes it doesn't ask permission. It just takes two broken people and puts them together, and suddenly they're not broken anymore. They're whole. Our wedding took place on the estate grounds 2 months later, in a garden transformed into something from a fairy tale. White roses everywhere, string lights turning the evening into magic, and a small gathering of people who mattered. Irina dabbing at tears, Dr. Petrov smiling benignly. Konstantin's most trusted men standing as witnesses. I wore a dress that cost more than a year of my old salary, my hair swept up and crowned with flowers. But the most precious thing I wore was the expression on Konstantin's face when he saw me walking toward him. Awe and love and possessive satisfaction all rolled into one devastating look. We spoke our vows in English and Russian, binding ourselves to each other in both languages. When Konstantin slipped the wedding band onto my finger, platinum studded with diamonds, his hands trembled slightly. "You're mine now," he murmured, just loud enough for me to hear. Legally, officially mine. "I was always yours," I whispered back, "from the moment you walked into that diner with Alexei in your arms." The kiss he gave me was tender and fierce and full of promise. In the front row, Alexei, dressed in a tiny suit that made him look like a miniature version of his uncle, clapped his pudgy hands together and squealed, and laughter rippled through our small gathering. That night, in the bedroom we now shared openly, Konstantin made love to me as my husband for the first time. His hands worshipped every inch of my body, his mouth following the path his fingers traced. And when he finally slid inside me, it felt like coming home. "I want to put a baby in you," he groaned against my neck, his control fracturing. "Want to see you round with my child. Want to watch you nurse our son or daughter the way you nursed Alexei." "Yes," I gasped, my nails digging into his shoulders. "Yes, Konstantin, please." He took me over the edge again, and when we finally collapsed together, sweat-slicked and breathless, his hand found my stomach, pressing gently like he could will a life into existence there. "I love you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "My wife, my Maya." "I love you too," I whispered, turning in his arms to face him. "My husband, my Konstantin." 3 months later, I sat in Dr. Petrov's office at the estate, staring at the ultrasound image in my trembling hands. 8 weeks pregnant, a tiny blob on the screen that would become our child, a sibling for Alexei, the product of love between a broken waitress and a dangerous man who'd found redemption in saving each other. Konstantin burst through the door, having been summoned from a meeting. His eyes went immediately to my face, reading my expression, and I saw fear flash across his features, fear that something was wrong, that I was hurt, that the fragile happiness we'd built was crumbling. "I'm pregnant," I said, and watched his world reorganize itself around those 2 words. For a moment, he was completely still. Then he crossed to me in 3 long strides, dropping to his knees in front of my chair, his hands going to my stomach with devastating gentleness. "A baby," he breathed, his forehead pressing against my belly. "Our baby." "Are you happy?" I asked, suddenly uncertain. "I know we talked about it, but..." He looked up at me, and the naked joy in his face stole my breath. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it, Moya Lyubov. You've given me everything. Alexei's life, your love, and now this. A family. A real family." I ran my fingers through his hair, feeling tears slip down my cheeks. "I was so scared when I walked into your life that night, and lost, and convinced I'd never have anything good again. And now? I thought about the estate that had become my home, about Alexei sleeping peacefully in the nursery upstairs, about the man kneeling before me who'd fought monsters, both external and internal, to protect what we'd built. I thought about the baby growing inside me, the tangible proof that love could bloom even in the darkest soil. "Now I have everything," I whispered. "Now I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." Konstantin stood, pulling me into his arms, and I felt his heart beating against mine. Steady, strong, alive. Outside, I could hear Alexei's laughter as Irina played with him, could smell the roses blooming in the garden, could feel the warmth of the afternoon sun streaming through the windows. This life, this dangerous, improbable, precious life, had started with a desperate man, a dying baby, and a waitress with too much milk and not enough hope. It had been born from tragedy and survival, from need and chance, and the kind of fate that didn't ask permission before rearranging everything. But it had grown into something beautiful, something worth fighting for, something worth every risk, every fear. every moment of uncertainty. I love you, I said against Constantine's chest, feeling our baby flutter between us like a promise. I love you more, he murmured into my hair. You and Alexei and this new little one. My family. My everything. My reason for being better than I was. For building something beyond violence and power. He pulled back just enough to kiss me. Soft and sweet and full of tomorrow. And I tasted our future in it. A future with children's laughter filling the halls. With love outlasting danger. With two broken people who'd found wholeness in each other. The sun set over the Volkov estate, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. And somewhere in the nursery, Alexei, the baby whose refusal to eat had brought us together, sang nonsense syllables to himself, happy and healthy and loved. And I thought about the girl I'd been 6 months ago. Invisible, desperate, convinced her best days were behind her, and barely recognized her. That girl had died the night she'd offered her breast milk to a stranger's baby and walked into a world she couldn't imagine. In her place stood a woman who was seen, cherished, claimed, a woman who'd learned that sometimes salvation comes wrapped in danger, that sometimes love grows in the darkest places, and that sometimes the family you choose, or the family that chooses you, is worth more than anything you could have planned. I was Maya Volkov now. Wife to a dangerous man. Mother to his nephew, soon to be mother to his child. And for the first time in my life, I was exactly who I was meant to be, exactly where I belonged, home.